Hello, gentlemen and lady. With the Burning Crusade shaking up class balance, you might have some idea of what classes are truly the best in the Burning Crusade. However, after running some polls with you all, it's become apparent there is a class that has been overlooked. This class is not only one of the best for PvP, but also PvE, and has multiple viable specializations. This class is so good that it's a staple in both arena compositions and raid groups. It has utility that literally no other class has, and it's not just nice to have utility, it's game-breakingly good utility. So why is this class underrepresented and underestimated? Probably because most people aren't beep. This class is the only class that, depending on what race you play, you will have race-specific abilities. That's right, that one gave it away. I'm talking about the Priest. Underrated and underrepresented, the Priest is a powerhouse in the Burning Crusade. They are the only class that can remove a mage's ice block and a paladin's divine protection, otherwise known as bubble, using Mass Dispel, a new priest ability. Not only is that utility absolutely amazing in PvP, in PvE, Shadow Priests have Vampiric Touch. This is a new talent at the end of the Shadow Tree and is an incredible way to help keep their party have their mana. Vampiric Touch causes 650 shadow damage at rank 3 over 15 seconds to your target and causes all party members to gain mana equal to 5% of any shadow damage you deal. So unlike Vampiric Embrace, it actually does damage too. And by the way, doesn't this tooltip just remind you of the evil monkey in Family Guy just pointing over at Chris? I think it's hilarious. Mass Dispel, however, isn't the only thing that priests have for TBC. Mana burn is super strong. Against ret paladins who already struggle with mana, mana burn can literally take them out of the fight in seconds. Now, I do want to talk about some healing spells, particularly Prayer of Mending. This is a new ability, which is the classic bouncing around heal that you hear and see all of the time in the Burning Crusade. Basically, it places a spell on the target that heals them for 800 the next time they take damage at rank 1. When the heal occurs, Prayer of Mending jumps to a raid member within 20 yards. It will jump up to 5 times and last 30 seconds after each jump. Now, this is an awesome healing ability. It's essentially kind of like a power word shield that only activates when damage is taken, but it's a heal. And I think that's a great new addition and a great way to preemptively get ready to heal, especially on tanks like druids or warriors who have rage, where power word shield is really not the best, right? Because they can't get rage if they're absorbing hits, right? Now, mind control is also ridiculous in the Burning Crusade. Now, I know mind control was an ability in Classic, but I feel like it just got super buffed in the Burning Crusade. Not necessarily the ability itself, but because of what was introduced. Now, Blades Edge Mountains Arena is a arena that has a bridge across the center. Essentially, if you mind control an enemy healer who is at the top of the bridge and force them to jump off the bridge, it can be absolutely catastrophic for the other team's coordination. Not only that, but with Eye of the Storm added as the new battleground in the Burning Crusade, priests can mind control people off a ton more ledges. No longer are they limited to just the mines and lumber mill in Arathi Basin any longer. Now, one of my absolute favorite priest abilities has been added in the Burning Crusade. I mean, seriously, this one just gives me chills. It is so awesome. Shadow Word Death. It is a dark word of binding that inflicts 500 to 600 shadow damage to the target. If the target is not killed by Shadow Word Death, then you, the caster, will be inflicted the same amount as you did to them, right? And the reason this is so powerful is because it's an instant cast ability that actually does a good amount of damage. Now, if you remember in the Burning Crusade, if you're a healer and really neither you or your teammates are taking a lot of damage, usually a skilled player will begin to also do some damage to the enemy team in order to increase the pressure on the enemy healer. And what happens is, priests have a ton of offensive abilities, and this is what makes them so incredible in PvP. They have offensive dispels. They can strip away the enemy team's buffs, including shields, heals over time, things like that, or even pain suppression if you're lucky, right? There are tons of things, but on top of that, you also now have a bursty instant cast ability. Line up a Holy Fire followed by a Shadow Word Death, and you actually have a good amount of burst to help your team with. I just think that this is a fantastic ability. Obviously, you want to use it as a finishing move, but even if you don't, it's still really, really strong. Now, I do want to talk about my second favorite new ability for priests in the Burning Crusade, which is Shadow Fiend. Creates a shadowy fiend to attack the target. Caster receives mana when the Shadow Fiend deals damage. This is essentially an ability that was added in the Burning Crusade in order to allow priests to have more stamina, more endurance in a longer fight. Now, typically, if you're playing RMP, or maybe you're playing Priest Rogue in twos, you guys are probably going to freaking face roll and just stomp noobs all day. But as you start to play more better opponents, you're eventually going to be in longer fights that require more coordination and, most of all, more mana. Shadow Fiend is really the answer to your mana needs. Now, against skilled players, they will obviously keep their eyes out for a Shadow Fiend and do whatever they can to CC it once they see that you've summoned it. Things like Cyclone or Entangling Roots are really easy ways for the Druid to basically stop you from getting your mana back. Obviously, if a Druid casts Innervate as a priest, you can also offensively dispel that too. However, knowing that ahead of time as a priest, make sure to cast Shadow Fiend on maybe an inconspicuous target, maybe a hunter's pet, or maybe in, someone where they wouldn't see it happening, right? Now, my third favorite ability, which honestly really contends for number 2, it is Pain Suppression. This ability just fills me with freaking joy, man. This ability reduces all damage taken by the target by 40% and increases resistance to dispel mechanics by 65% for 8 seconds. So those are 2 really, really strong defensive buffs, right? And I just think it is super important and really an indicator of how good the priest is depending on when they cast it. Like if a BM hunter begins to glow like the frickin' sun, it might be a good time to pop Pain Suppression. In the hands of an unskilled priest, they will probably cast Pain Suppression too late. Like when they see that their teammates already at 50% health, it's kind of too late, right? You really want to preemptively prepare when you know the burst is coming. You see a paladin growing wings. You see, those types of things happen. People start glowing. Little red circles start flying all over them, right? They turn red. It's time to pop Pain Suppression, right? Doing it ahead of time so that you don't get bursted. But you got to be careful, because if you pop it too early, then you effed up and they're just going to go for you, right? So depending on, I really think Pain Suppression is the sign of a skilled player, how they use it. One of my absolute favorite abilities. Now, it's not only good for PvP. I know I've been talking a lot about PvP, but also in PvE, it's a fantastic way to help mitigate some damage on your tank. For example, 40% damage reduction. Amazing. Now, I know you're concerned. Instantly reduces a friendly target's threat by 5%. 5% is not a crazy amount of threat reduction. Granted, it will obviously reduce some threat. Usually the tank should not lose aggro. So it's absolutely a PvE ability as well. Now, one of the most exciting things about priests, and if you haven't played a priest, I think this will be really, really informative, is that each priest has specific racials depending on what race you choose. Now, for Horde, there are a number of really, really strong priest racials. One of them that is not strong, however, is the new Blood Elf racial Consume Magic, starting with the absolute worst. Now, this ability just absolutely enrages me. It is just so terrible. Dispels one beneficial magic effect from the caster and gives them 120 to 155 mana. The dispel effect must be a priest spell. Now, the reason I think that this sucks is because what priest spell would you want to dispel from yourself for mana? Like, it just doesn't make any, and for so little, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, maybe a rank 1 renew, but even then, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I can't believe considering all the changes Blizzard is making, with the hashtag some changes, I can't believe Consume Magic was entirely overlooked. The other racial is Touch of Weakness. This applies to undead and blood elves. I think it's pretty fun, but it's really not that strong. Basically, on the next melee attack, the caster will cast Touch of Weakness, a curse on the enemy, which will reduce the damage caused by the attacker by 35 for 120 seconds. It's all right. It's not that strong. I think it's cool, but it kind of sucks. All right, now this is where things get really interesting. Trolls, I think, are among the most overlooked priest racials. Shadow Guard. This is essentially like Lightning Shield, Water Shield, or Earth Shield. There's 3 charges, and when the caster is struck, they will deal 130 shadow damage to the attacker. Attackers can only be damaged once every few seconds. Now, the reason Shadow Guard, in my opinion, is so strong is because you can combine this with the priest shadow talent, Blackout. Now, Blackout gives a percentage, I believe with 5 points, a 10% chance upon dealing shadow damage to stun the target for, I believe, 3 seconds, which is a very long stun, enough to really mess with a rogue's rotation and honestly their freaking day. Because if they're going ham on a priest and all of a sudden they get stunned for 3 seconds, that sucks, especially if they just opened with like a cheap shot or something. So Shadow Guard for PvP has some absolutely intensely powerful implications. So really awesome, underrated ability. Now the other one, which is crazy to even say this, might be just as good. Hex of Weakness. This spell weakens the target enemy, reducing damage caused by 35 and reducing the effectiveness of any healing by 20%. That's right, it is a freaking Mortal Strike ability. Now I know, I can already see it. It's not Mortal Strike, I agree. But you know what? It's 20%, which is still something. Mortal Strike is 50 for those of you not aware. So it's still a damage reducing healing effect. Now, typically, priests do play with rogues. In RMP, you're going to have wound poison, and in 2v2, again, wound poison. However, there are probably situations where maybe the wound poison fell off, whether that's, abolish poison from the druid, or maybe somehow the rogue got CC'd and the target has cleansed it off themselves. Hex of Weakness is another way to help reduce the enemy's heals. It's got a 30-yard range, too. Really underrated troll priest. I think it's really, really strong for PvP. Now, another, and honestly, undead have Will of the Forsaken, so don't get me wrong. I think they're super strong too. And on top of Will of the Forsaken, they've also got Devouring Plague, which afflicts the target with a disease that does a ton of shadow damage, however, over 24 seconds, which honestly makes the spell not that strong. It's really, the benefit is that damage caused by Devouring Plague will heal the caster. Now, if you actually look in Vanilla Classic, Devouring Plague base, highest rank spell does less damage than Shadow Word Pain, and it costs like more than twice the amount of mana. So really, all that mana is paying for is an extra heal. So Devouring Plague, while good, in my opinion, quite good, it is still a little bit overrated in my opinion. Now that we're done with Horde Priest racials, I do want to talk about Alliance ones, because honestly, if you played Alliance in Classic Vanilla, you probably played a Dwarf Priest. And the reason is because Fear Ward is just that good. Now, Dwarves were the only race that got Fear Ward. Fear Ward essentially protects the target from the next fear effect used. It will cause that fear to fail, and that will use up the ward, removing it as a buff. It lasts 180 seconds, and it has a 180 second cooldown. So theoretically, you should always be able to have a Fear Ward up. Now, in the Burning Crusade, Draenei were equipped with Fear Ward as well, which is awesome. Thank God. I don't want to have to play Dwarf Midget if I want to have Fear Ward. However, we know from BlizzCon Online 2021 that the version of the game that we will have will be patch 2.4.3. And if you look at the patch notes, as of patch 2.3.0, all priests are able to have Fear Ward trainable at level 20, which is awesome. That basically gives Horde Fear Ward, and it gives all other races, human and night elf, the ability to have Fear Ward. Awesome. However, what happens to that empty like spell slot, right? So Draenei and dwarves are gifted with Chastise instead of Fear Ward. I mean, obviously they still have it, but Chastise is the new spell introduced once everyone got Fear Ward. Now Chastise is actually really strong for both PvE and PvE. And I wouldn't say really strong, but it's got some nice utility. It's essentially a 2-second immobilization, and again, you got 20-yard range when you use it, and it does a little bit of holy damage. However, it only works on humanoids. So I think that's a pretty good ability. On top of that, Symbol of Hope is really strong as well, which is Draenei only. It's going to give your party 100 mana, essentially, over 15 seconds. And I'm sure as you skill that up, it'll give more. But I just think it's awesome that Draenei priests have the ability to really give mana to their team. However, out of all of the different races that Alliance have for you to roll priest, I honestly think Night Elf may just be the strongest. Now, hear me out. Elune's Grace reduces the chance you'll be hit by melee and ranged attacks by 20% for 15 seconds. Now, this is like a rogue's evasion. However, the chance of being not hit is way lower, only 20%. However, the drawback of evasion is that warriors, when their attacks are dodged, they can overpower and do a ton of damage. However, with Elune's Grace, it is not a dodge. It's just that the opponent has missed. It's a 20% chance, reducing, the chance to get hit. So it will not proc overpower. That's really strong. 20%, that's really strong. On top of that, Star Shards, which used to literally be like consume magic and just literally made me rage. I played a Night Elf priest. I casted Star Shards thinking it was a dot. I saw it was not, and I immediately deleted my character because of how upset I was. So it essentially in the Burning Crusade will be a dot, so I guess I could have just waited, but it's a 15-second dot that does about 800 damage at rank 8, right? Which is literally only 300 less than Devouring Plague, which is crazy. So honestly, it's almost like a Devouring Plague for Night Elves. It's really awesome. Now, I do want to talk about the human racial, which I think is so-so, which is feedback. Any successful spell cast against the priest while they have feedback on, which lasts 15 seconds, will burn 165 of the attacker's mana and deal 1 shadow damage for each point of mana burned. Now, this isn't that great. However, I do want to mention that, of course, the blackout proc, right? This is shadow damage being caused. So it could be another way, and honestly, how cool would that be to get a blackout proc off feedback to get that proc, right? So, although I don't think it's really that great, it's something, personally, I would probably play Night Elf if I could choose out of all these different priests. From someone who played a Shadow Priest in the Burning Crusade, they were asked, is playing a priest fun? Because at the end of the day, isn't that what is most important? And what they say is yes. Playing Shadow Priest in the Burning Crusade is very, very fun. You've got utility. You've got face melting damage. You look shadowy. Everyone loves you because you're a mana battery. And on top of that, you can also shift out and be a healer when needed. Now, he did want to talk about the downside of playing a Shadow Priest, and that is that you will essentially be loot deprived. And what they mean by that is that most of your BIS is just going to be crafted. So if you're familiar with TBC, Frozen Shadow Weave set, that is your best in slot for quite some time. And then when you finally do replace that gear, you kind of are falling out of the DPS race. Shadow Priests in later, post tier 4 TBC are not really going to be at the top of the meters. That's really reserved for hunters and warlocks. I'm just kidding. But no, I'm serious. Shadow Priest damage isn't that crazy in the Burning Crusade after about tier 4, right? So that's basically it, guys. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on some awesome new TBC content coming out. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.